Let me take the trash out first. Boris Johnson, who made that fateful trip to Kiev when Russia and Ukraine had agreed, indeed inked, an agreement that would have stopped the war within 3 months, maybe 2 months of it having started. Well, we now know what he was up to. He set up a company secretly offshore to which £1 million was transferred by the man who made the drones and other military equipment that were being used by the Ukrainian armed forces. He didn't tell anybody about it, and it's only now revealed by what he thinks he has disparagingly described as a Russian internet hack. Well, it was good enough to get on the front page of the Guardian Observer, never knowingly stampeded into any kind of pro-Russian mode. The £1 million that was transferred explains why on that ill-fated trip that Boris Johnson took, that kept the war going now for years and has cost the lives of well over 1 million people, the man that he took with him, that nobody knew, that nobody was able to report exactly who he was the man who gave the £1 million and was the man who was up to his neck supplying the very military equipment and munitions to Ukraine, and the business would be guaranteed as long as Zelensky could be talked out of the peace agreement that had been inked in Istanbul. It is a sordid and grubby tale, even in its own terms. Secret transfer of £1 million to a politician so that he can finance his political work post-prime ministerial office, and that £1 million given by an arms manufacturer who's then brought to Kiev and introduced to all the right people. We don't know how much that man made from that trip, but you can guess, given the amounts of money that are swirling around in Kiev for weapons and munition, billions upon billions, tens of billions of dollars, you can be sure that he got his money's worth from Boris Johnson. And of course, you're left wondering why Boris only got paid £1 million for what may very well have been billions of pounds in arms export. But of course, the hunt will now be on to check whether that £1 million was the only £1 million that he got. Boris Johnson now stands totally disgraced, as does Zelensky. His mandate ran out long ago. His own party are no longer doing his bidding. They refused, for example, to pass a resolution in the Rada in the last week to nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel War Prize. Hard luck, Donald, you didn't get it, but one of your stooges in Venezuela did, and she's dedicated it to you in any case. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee, keeping up its long tradition of supporting everybody that hates peace, everybody that loves war. And it was a very clear signal that the Nobel Committee at least are behind the war drive against Venezuela on which Trump is bent. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. What was much more interesting this week was the standing up to the bully Trump made by President Xi Jinping and the government of China. As I say, I am myself China bound. Now, Donald Trump took 2 provocative actions against China. He must have thought that it seemed like a good idea at the time, but it turned out to wipe trillions of dollars off the US stock exchange, to obliterate crypto prices, with people losing tens, even hundreds of millions at a stroke. But somebody in Trump's entourage knew that it was about to happen. They took a short position on a crypto account that they had only opened that morning. And then when the short position triumphed mightily on Donald Trump's provocations against China over carrier routes and other tariff-related matters, the short position was vindicated in short order. Somebody banked $300 million in profit and promptly closed their account. If the United States media, if the United States Congress was any kind of media, was any kind of Congress, the hunt would now be on to establish who opened and closed in a single day a position which eerily, uncannily predicted a collapse in the American stock market and made off with $300 million. A third of $1 billion in an afternoon. Now, if that somebody turned out to be somebody in Donald Trump's family or somebody in Donald Trump's circle, that would be curtains, fatal for the Trump presidency, wouldn't it? Yes, that's exactly why we will never know who did it. Just like we will never know what they've got on Trump in the Epstein affair. I'm reading Whitney Webb's stunningly detailed second volume of revelations about who Jeffrey Epstein was, who was behind him, who set him up, who funded him, and for what purpose. And I'll tell you, although it's a long read, it repays that time. It is abundantly clear that Donald Trump is so compromised by the Epstein affair that it explains virtually every step he's taken or not taken since he realized, or it was whispered in his ear, more likely, exactly what they have on tape on him. The Russians conveyed to the Iranians this week that Netanyahu doesn't want a war with Iran. The more they talked of their honour, the faster we counted our spoons. My reading of that, and we'll check it with Professor Marandi in the second half of the show, is that that means they do want a war with Iran. President Putin passed on the information after a telephone call with Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu's tea is almost out, as we say in Scotland. The divisions in Israel are such that it is high time for everybody concerned, except him and his grasping wife, that a new coat of lipstick was applied to the settler apartheid state, and is very likely to happen now. Trump has just too much invested in his so-called peace plan in Gaza to allow Netanyahu to wreck it, at least in the very near future. There was a meeting scheduled for this evening in Sharm el-Sheikh, where Muslim leaders and Arab leaders and American mediators were due to gather. They were to put flesh on the bones of Trump's peace plan, or roulette tables on the floors of the casinos of the Gaza Riviera, which we're told is to emerge on the bones, on the blood of the martyred there. It may very well have been postponed because of an extremely mysterious car crash which killed 3 senior members of the Qatari royal house, the Diwani of the Emir, the king's closest people, the Emir of Qatar's closest people. 3 of them were killed and 2 of them critically injured in a mysterious car crash on their way to the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. When I learned that the crash had occurred because the steering wheel of a top-of-the-range 6-seater Mercedes stopped working, well, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk affair and 1,000 other such affairs, I got to wondering just what this car crash was all about. We'll hear more again from Professor Marandi about that later in the show. Now, back to the drawing board of Gaza. The Italian Prime Minister Meloni has just savaged the British Prime Minister, at least at the time of the broadcast, for his wrecking role in several international matters, but she was referring in particular to Gaza. She was contradicting his implied claim that he had played any kind of role at all in bringing about a ceasefire and an exchange of captives on the Israel-Palestine front. And, very importantly, she denounced Starmer for forcing his mentor, Tony Blair, into the ugly picture of the Trump-Kushner plan. I'm not sure that it's going to work out for Tony. I do hope and I do believe that he has other projects to which he can turn, because the whole world knows, even Meloni knows, that putting Tony Blair back in the Middle East, where he presided over 1 million Iraqi dead, the cascade of Al-Qaeda and then ISIS around the entire region and thereafter the world, doesn't sound like a good idea, isn't really necessary. And so I'm expecting, I predict, that Tony Blair's name will begin to fade from the headlines in the putative peace plan of Donald Trump. A very important journalist has just been murdered in the last hour, or his death has just been announced in the last hour in the Gaza Strip. Murdered this time not directly by Israel, but by their gangs. Who are these gangs? These are criminal gangs who were involved in the drugs business, big time, before the October 7th chapter of this 77-year war between Israel and the indigenous Palestinians began. These drug gangs have now been armed and are operating under the protection of Netanyahu's invasion force. It's now clear what they will be used for. They will be used to foment an uprising in Gaza against the resistance who just signed the peace agreement with Donald Trump and to worldwide acclamation. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is either, because Hamas have already announced that they are leaving the political scene in Gaza. Which brings me to a point I really want to accentuate. We've tried before to do it, but we need traction now. Nelson Mandela was safe from murder in the 27 years he spent in the dungeons of apartheid. He was safe even from torture. He was safe even from the more dramatic forms of ill treatment that are regularly, daily, hourly meted out to Palestinian prisoners, as we saw in the videos of the prisoners being prepared for release in this international peace deal. They were forced to crouch and were beaten as they went through a hoop to prepare for their release. But Marwan Barghouti is just as important as Nelson Mandela. In fact, in world terms, in terms of the consequences of the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict, you could argue that Marwan Barghouti is right now one of the most important men in global politics. He is the Nelson Mandela of Palestine. We have regularly featured members of the Barghouti family, including his extremely deft and articulate son, Arab Barghouti. We have spoken with other members of the Barghouti family regularly. Dr. Mustafa, Marwan Barghouti's cousin. Why am I bringing this up? Because in defiance of the deal and against the wishes of at least some members of the American delegation to the talks, Israel has reneged on the agreement to release Marwan Barghouti, 23 years now in prison. And what a prison. Marwan Barghouti has twice the stature that he had when he went in, but he's half the man he used to be. He's lost half of his body weight. He looks 30 years older than he actually is. He has been savagely beaten, not once, but twice, taken out of sight of the internal CCTV cameras in the Israeli dungeon in which he is held and beaten to a pulp. He is tortured. He is tortured actively and passively by denial of medication and denial of nourishing food. We have to make Marwan Barghouti as big a political prisoner as Nelson Mandela was. The specials with their wonderful anthem, Free Nelson Mandela. We need cultural, political, journalistic, broadcasting, highlighting of the importance of Marwan Barghouti. He's not Hamas. He's no longer even Fatah, the faction founded by President Arafat, but long ago betrayed by those at the helm there now. Marwan Barghouti is the only man who can bring this Israel-Palestine conflict to an end by negotiation. He's the only man who can straddle all the multifarious forces, including the Islamist ones. He is a progressive, secular, nationalist politician. He is the Nelson Mandela in this picture. And yet far too many people, including regular watchers of this show, barely ever mention his name. So I am mentioning it now. Now, because we've got Professor Marandi on the show, I'm not going to delve deeper at this stage into this promise that Netanyahu asked Putin to convey to the leadership in Iran. It might even be true, though I doubt it. What is undoubtedly true is that Donald Trump has his fingerprints on triggers all over the world, in theatre after theatre. It's not yet a shooting war between the United States and China. And if it ever becomes one, it will be the end of the world. An American leader once boasted, we could destroy China 3 times over. And the Chinese replied, we can destroy the United States of America only once, but we think once is enough. The attempt to bludgeon and browbeat China has been stymied by one thing above all. As President Bill Clinton once said, it's the economy, stupid. China's economy is performing better than all other economies in the world. It has long been the biggest manufacturing economy in the world. More and more of its customers are paying it in their own domestic currencies, cutting out the dollar entirely. But China's possession of the vast majority of rare earth metals, essential for everything from your mobile phone to the world's most sophisticated weaponry, is, if you'll forgive the pun, China's trump card. And they just played it. They have banned any export anywhere of Chinese rare earth materials. And that has brought Donald Trump panting like a dog seeking its dinner for peace with China. I hope to be able to report much more of that to you over the next couple of weeks. But meanwhile, let's get on with the show. It is the mother of all talk shows.